At a nature sanctuary, a young child is left alone, crying by the roadside. A large lion named Titan notices the child and lets out a deep growl, running toward him. What happens next is surprising. Titan, the massive lion, approaches as the child's cries echo through the empty area. It was early morning and the place was deserted. Titan, with his majestic mane blowing in the cool breeze, suddenly stops when he sees the boy's tear-filled eyes. The child's face was red and wet with tears as he looked up at the lion. Titan lifted his head and roared, baring his teeth, while the boy stood frozen on the dirt road with nowhere to go. In a moment of fear, Titan roared again, glaring at the boy with sharp eyes. Titan had lived at the sanctuary ever since he was rescued as a cub by Jacob, a caring park ranger. Titan had been found abandoned next to his dead mother, and Jacob had taken him in, waking up at all hours to care for the helpless cub. Having given his heart and soul to the sanctuary since he was just 16, Jacob was well aware of the significance of making Titan acquainted with other lions before he became too dependent on human interaction. The vast sanctuary housed numerous prides of lionesses, and Jacob was hopeful that Titan would be accepted by one of the experienced lioness mothers he saw around. As soon as the cub grew strong enough, he entrusted him to the vigilant care of a lioness, a caring mother of 3. Despite being fiercely protective, she was one of the most docile lionesses Jacob had ever encountered. He hoped this mix would prove conducive to raising Titan. Jacob's intuition was correct, and the lioness embraced Titan as her own. Jacob was overjoyed at this fruitful result, and over the succeeding years, he observed Titan grow into independence and eventually leave his pride. Adult male lions prefer solitude, and leaving their pride for the first time is always fraught with danger. There was an understanding that Titan stood a better chance of surviving within the sanctuary, but the risk of meeting a more dominant lion and consequently fighting over territory or mates was always present. Jacob had an incredible love for the lion prides in the sanctuary, but kept an extra watchful eye on Titan. The time the young park ranger had spent rescuing and nurturing the cub had developed a personal bond with the lion christened Titan. However, the lion was soon to do something that would take the ranger by complete surprise. Despite his challenging start, Titan managed to fit in well in the reserve. His bravery, intimidating demeanor, and enormous size rapidly made him one of the most dominant males in the reserve. Jacob, the ranger, was aware that Titan had prevailed in several battles. It was raw, but it was natural. The animals on the reserve lived as they would in the wild, but with the added protection against poachers. A team of vets was on standby if needed. The survival of these animals was paramount due to their endangered status. Thus, Jacob occasionally worried about Titan, but knew he was in the safest place. Even though the reserve did its best to shield the animals from poachers, there had recently been a few incidents with hunters breaching the boundaries of the reserve. No animals had been harmed thus far, but it became more crucial than ever to reinforce the borders of the reserve and deter the poachers. It was due to these porous boundaries that Titan found himself confronted with an abandoned, distressed child. The lone lion rose from his sleep as the sun began to rise, and the lions were usually more active during the cooler parts of the day. Titan's stomach rumbled as a signal of hunger, and he stretched leisurely, indicating it was time for his hunt. Securing food while living in solitude might be challenging, but Titan seemed to manage well. The colossal lion stretched once more, extending his huge paws, but then paused abruptly, his attention drawn by an unusual sound and distinct scent carried by the wind. Following his instincts, Titan moved toward the sound of crying and found a small child alone on the dirt road. Without hesitation, Titan started walking toward the distressed boy, who sat in the middle of the road with the hood of his blue jacket covering his face. The child, no older than 3, sobbed loudly, tears streaming down his cheeks. Titan kept his distance but circled the boy, never taking his eyes off him. The child's cries were heartbreaking, causing Titan to pace back and forth, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, Titan froze as he caught a new scent in the air. His fur bristled, and he roared, baring his teeth. The little boy, startled, stopped crying. Though Titan seemed angry, the boy realized the lion wasn't focused on him. Titan's gaze was fixed beyond the child. Without warning, Titan leaped over the boy and landed on another lion, pinning it to the ground. The boy turned to see the 2 lions locked in a brief but fierce struggle, with Titan overpowering the other lion. Meanwhile, Jacob, the park ranger, was driving along the dirt road, unaware of the incredible scene unfolding ahead. As he rounded a corner, he saw the 2 lions fighting and, to his horror, noticed the small child nearby. Jacob quickly accelerated, rushing to the boy's aid. The second lion broke free from Titan's grip and limped away. Titan roared and then turned his attention back to the child. Jacob's heart raced, fearing the worst. But to his amazement, Titan calmly laid down next to the boy, shielding him and scanning the area for any other threats. What Jacob had witnessed wasn't a fight for food but a protective act. Titan had fought off the other lion to keep the boys safe. Jacob remembered finding Titan as a cub, huddled against his dead mother, and wondered if the lion saw something familiar in the crying child. Regardless, Jacob was awestruck by Titan's actions. He only hoped his trust in Titan was justified, as he knew the boy needed to be safely removed from the road. If Titan prevented him from helping the boy, Jacob wasn't sure what he would do next. He switched off the engine and gently opened the Jeep door. Among all the rangers at the reserve, Jacob was the one whom Titan trusted most. The young ranger could spend hours observing and following Titan without ever disturbing him. Titan always seemed to recognize him, as if the memory of Jacob saving him in the past lingered, causing him to treat the ranger in a unique way. Now stepping out of the safety of his vehicle, Jacob hoped this past connection would work in his favor. As Jacob approached, Titan, the giant lion, looked at him carefully, assessing his trustworthiness. After what seemed like an eternity, the lion finally stood and walked away nonchalantly. Jacob waited, not wanting to jeopardize Titan's approval by making hasty moves. Once the lion was a safe distance away, Jacob picked up the little child. With Titan around, the child had remained composed, but as the lion walked away, the child began crying again. Jacob had no option but to comfort the boy while driving at a slow and cautious speed back to the station. His mind was filled with questions. Why had the boy been left alone on the road? Jacob was also astonished by Titan's unexpected behavior. The fastest way to seek answers was to analyze the CCTV footage, hoping it could provide some insights. Upon reviewing the footage from the reserve's perimeter, Jacob caught sight of something that shattered his heart. A rundown old car appeared on the screen just outside the reserve. After squinting his eyes, Jacob discerned a young man driving the vehicle. A few minutes later, a young woman with a child in her arms emerged from the car. She hastily looked around before spotting a gap in the fence, through which she pushed her way, setting the child on the dirt track where Jacob had found him. The woman then retreated to the car, leaving the boy behind. Watching this act left Jacob dumbstruck and more puzzled than ever. The woman's tender gesture toward the boy indicated she had been compelled to abandon him. But why in a reserve where the child could be in harm's way? Was she under the impression that the security cameras were monitored around the clock and that the child would be found immediately? Did she assume a ranger might be nearby to rescue the child? Jacob knew he might never get answers to all his questions. He would of course do everything possible to locate the child's parents, but deep down, he felt they were long gone. After reviewing the footage, Jacob prepared a meal for the little boy. The young one seemed to have regained his composure, providing an opportune moment for the ranger to extract some details before involving the authorities. The child, appearing scared, only revealed that his name was Tom. Jacob realized it was time to make some tough calls. As he liaised with the officers, he watched Tom cautiously consume his meal, which triggered a peculiar realization. Jacob had once saved Titan, the lion cub, after it lost its mother. Now he saw the same lion protecting a young boy abandoned by his parents. The parallel struck Jacob, but unlike Titan, who stayed under his care, Tom faced an uncertain future. Jacob understood the hardships that likely forced Tom's parents to leave him, as the local community struggled financially. Remembering the footage of Tom's mother's desperate actions left Jacob feeling gloomy about the boy's fate after leaving the reserve. When the authorities arrived, Tom found comfort watching videos on Jacob's phone after a good meal, playfully roaring and pointing outside, shouting, "Lion." But the authorities explained that, with no relatives coming forward, Tom would be placed in an orphanage. Jacob couldn't bear the thought of this sudden change in the boy's life. Without hesitation, he offered to care for Tom while the search for his family continued. Despite having no experience with children, the boy had captured his heart, much like Titan had years before. Moments later, Jacob received unfortunate news. The search for Tom's family had failed, and the boy would soon be sent to an orphanage. Jacob felt a deep sadness as he looked at Tom, who had quickly adapted to life with him. Just the day before, Tom had joyfully accompanied him on a drive, marveling at the playful lion cubs. Through Tom's eyes, Jacob felt a renewed connection to the reserve he loved. He knew Tom would one day wonder why he was abandoned, but Jacob promised himself that he would always be there to remind Tom of his parents' love and the brave lion that had protected him. Determined not to let Tom go to an orphanage, Jacob decided to adopt him. The months that followed were difficult as he navigated the adoption process, but eventually, they returned to the reserve to celebrate their new life together. As their Jeep passed by, the lion Titan, who had once saved Tom, lifted his head and looked at them. Jacob was eager to one day share Titan's remarkable story with Tom. Together, they had formed an unconventional but perfect family, one Jacob wouldn't trade for anything. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.